The
Where's the
Mafia
money?
boss locked the
I
black maid
told
in the
you I don't
basement, but the
know.
mansion held its
Please,
breath.
I don't know what you're
Hello
talking.
everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Maya Williams had worked in the Grand Moretti estate for over a year now. Each day, she carried out her duties without complaint, cleaning rooms that sparkled with luxury and performing tasks that often went unnoticed. The mansion was a world apart from the humble life she had known before. From the outside, it looked like a life of privilege, but inside, she was often treated as invisible, like a shadow that was only noticed when needed. Maya never spoke much about her past, never revealed the struggles she had faced before finding this job. It was better that way. No one cared for her story. They only cared for the work she did, the way she kept the estate in perfect order, as if she were a ghost tending to their world. But that night, everything would change. It started as any other evening. The family was gone for the night, and Maya was left to clean up the remains of a lavish dinner. As she moved through the grand halls, her heart felt heavy with the weight of the silence that surrounded her. That silence, however, was broken when the door to the basement slammed shut, and she was locked inside. The master of the house, Vincent Moretti, had given the order. He was used to getting what he wanted, and tonight, he wanted Maya to learn her place. Vincent was a man who ruled with power and fear, a man whose word was law in the mansion. Maya had never crossed him before, never given him any reason to think she might challenge his authority. But tonight, something had changed. She could feel it in the air. Something was different. As the hours passed, the cold basement air seemed to close in on her. She could hear the muffled sounds of the mansion above, the laughter of his associates, the clinking of glasses as they celebrated. And here she was, locked away in the dark, a mere pawn in his world of power and control. Maya's mind raced as she sat in the dark corner of the basement. She had always known there was more to her than what they saw. She wasn't just the maid, the servant. She had skills, knowledge, a history that none of them would ever understand. Tonight, she would prove it. She had heard whispers of the Moretti family's secrets, bits and pieces of conversation she wasn't meant to overhear. There were things happening in this mansion, things that Vincent Moretti didn't want anyone to know. And she, Maya Williams, had the power to expose them. But first, she needed to get out. The seconds dragged on, feeling like hours. Finally, the click of a lock broke the silence. The door to the basement creaked open, and Maya stood up, her heart racing. She wasn't going to let this moment pass. She was ready to confront the very man who thought he could control her. As she walked toward the door, her mind was clear. This was her chance. She wasn't the helpless maid anymore. She had something that Vincent Moretti needed to fear. The mansion was about to hold its breath. Maya stood frozen in the cold, damp basement, her heart pounding in her chest. The door creaked open, and she knew this was the moment she had been waiting for. She could feel the weight of the darkness lifting as she took her first step toward freedom. The air in the mansion felt different now, heavy with tension, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. She glanced around the dimly lit room, the shadows seeming to stretch and twist like they were alive, and for a brief moment, the mansion felt like an entirely different place. She wasn't just a maid anymore, locked away and forgotten in the corners of the estate. No, tonight, she would stand up for herself. She had heard enough of the secrets whispered in the halls, the conversations that weren't meant for her ears. She had pieces of the puzzle that no one wanted her to see, and now, she had the chance to reveal them. Her eyes flicked to the staircase leading up to the main floor, where the voices of Vincent Moretti and his associates could still be heard, muffled and distant. She couldn't stay down here for long. The mansion was full of eyes, and the wrong step could lead to disaster. But Maya knew one thing for certain. Vincent would regret locking her away. She had something he needed. The question was, how far would she go to make him realize that? With quiet determination, she climbed the stairs, moving as silently as possible, her footsteps barely making a sound on the old wood. She reached the top, paused to listen for any sign of movement, and then pushed the door open. The hallway was empty, the lights dim and flickering. Maya's pulse quickened. She was alone, but she could still feel the weight of Vincent's power hanging over the place like a storm cloud. The mansion, grand and elegant, was full of hidden corners, dark secrets, and unspoken truths. She had lived among them for so long, but now, she would be the one to expose them. She moved quickly down the hall, her breath steady and measured, as she thought about everything she had learned over the past year. She knew things about Vincent that no one else did. He thought he was untouchable, that he could control everything. But Maya had seen through his facade. She had witnessed the cracks in his empire, the lies that he tried to keep buried. And now, those lies were going to surface. As she approached Vincent's office, the door slightly ajar, she felt a surge of confidence. She had come this far, and there was no turning back now. She slipped inside, the dim light of the desk lamp casting long shadows across the room. Vincent wasn't there, but his presence lingered, heavy and oppressive. Maya walked around the desk, her fingers brushing against the papers scattered across it. There were files, contracts, and documents. Nothing she hadn't seen before. But then her eyes landed on a small envelope tucked under a stack of papers. She reached for it, her fingers trembling slightly. Inside was a photograph, one she had never seen before. It was a picture of Vincent, younger, standing next to a man Maya didn't recognize. The photo looked old, worn, and crumpled at the edges. The man in the picture had a strange look in his eyes, one that reminded Maya of something she had seen in Vincent's eyes. Once or twice. Fear. She stared at the photograph for a long moment, her mind racing. What was this? Who was this man? She tucked the photo into her pocket, her heart racing. She had to find out more. The door to the office creaked open, and Maya quickly hid behind the large velvet curtain, holding her breath. She could hear Vincent's voice, low and commanding, as he spoke to someone just outside the door. Find her, he said, his tone sharp. She's not getting away with this. Not after everything we've done. Maya's heart skipped a beat. He was looking for her. She had to act fast. As the footsteps moved away, Maya slipped out from behind the curtain and made her way toward the exit. She was close now, so close to uncovering the truth. But she couldn't do it alone. She needed help. And for the first time in her life, Maya realized she wasn't just the maid anymore. She was a force to be reckoned with. She stepped out into the hallway, determination burning in her chest. The mansion was no longer just a place where she worked, it was a battleground. And she was ready to fight. Maya walked quickly down the hallway, her steps steady but quick. She was no longer afraid. Every moment she spent in the Moretti mansion was a moment she had to endure. But now, she felt something new inside her. A sense of purpose. She had never been given a chance to show what she was capable of, to prove that she was more than just a maid. But now, with the secrets she had uncovered and the photographs safely hidden in her pocket, she had the power to change everything. The voices in the mansion had quieted for the moment, but Maya knew it was only a matter of time before Vincent or one of his associates realized what had happened. She needed to act fast. As she reached the grand staircase, she paused for a moment and glanced around. The house was eerily silent now, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Maya's eyes narrowed, and she forced herself to stay focused. She couldn't let herself get distracted. The photograph had to be her key to unlocking everything, but she needed more. She needed to know who the man in the photo was, and what connection he had to Vincent. That was the only way to fully understand what Vincent was hiding. Without a moment's hesitation, she began her journey to the library. She knew the mansion's layout like the back of her hand, but now, it seemed like a maze. Each corridor felt unfamiliar, like she was walking through a different world. The walls, lined with elegant portraits and rich tapestries, gave the house a sense of grandiosity, but now, it felt cold. Almost like a prison. She couldn't afford to think like that. Not now. As she made her way through the hallway, she came across a few servants who greeted her, but she could tell by their faces that something was off. It was only a matter of time before they realized what she had done. She needed to reach the library and get to the old files that Vincent kept hidden away. She had seen him glance at them from time to time. They were tucked away in the far corner of the room, and Maya had always wondered what was inside. She reached the library door and slowly pushed it open. Inside, the room was bathed in soft golden light from the large windows. The shelves were stacked high with books, some of them old, some of them new, but Maya wasn't interested in the books. She had one goal now: find the files. She crossed the room quickly, keeping an eye on the door in case anyone came in. As she approached the far corner, her heart started to race. There, on the bottom shelf, was a file cabinet. She knelt down in front of it, her fingers trembling slightly as she pulled out the first drawer. The contents were meticulously organized, but she wasn't looking for anything specific. She just needed to find something that could connect the dots. She flipped through a few papers, her heart racing faster with every passing second. Then, just as she was about to give up, she saw it. A letter, tucked in between two folders, yellowed with age. She pulled it out, her breath catching in her throat as she unfolded the paper. The letter was old, dated over a decade ago, and it was addressed to Vincent. As she read the words, her mind raced. It was a letter from someone named Daniel Forsyth, a name she had never heard before. The letter spoke of a deal made between Vincent and someone named Marcus, and the details of the deal were shrouded in secrecy. But what caught Maya's eye was the final line. The debt must be paid, Vincent. The price will be greater than you expect. Maya's stomach churned as she folded the letter carefully and slipped it into her pocket. She had found what she was looking for. She had no idea who Daniel Forsyth or Marcus were, but she knew one thing. This deal was the key to Vincent's power, and it was tied to the secrets he had been hiding. She stood up quickly, her mind spinning with the possibilities. But before she could leave the library, she heard footsteps approaching. Maya's heart skipped a beat. She had no time to waste. She needed to get out of the library and back to her room before anyone saw her. She moved swiftly toward the door, but just as her hand touched the handle, she froze. The door was already opening. Maya's eyes met Vincent's, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. His eyes widened in surprise, but there was no anger, no immediate threat. For a brief moment, they just stared at each other. Then, without a word, Vincent stepped aside. Maya didn't hesitate. She walked past him, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew this was only the beginning. She had uncovered one piece of the puzzle, but there was more to be revealed. And Vincent Moretti would have no idea what was coming next. Maya didn't look back as she quickly walked down the long corridor. She could still feel Vincent's gaze on her, lingering like a shadow, but she wasn't afraid. She had done it. She had walked past him, and now she held the keys to his empire. She knew things now, secrets that no one was supposed to know. But Vincent, for all his power, had no idea how close he was to losing everything. She could feel her heart pounding as she made her way to her small, quiet room at the end of the hall. It was a place she rarely thought of as hers, but tonight, it felt like a sanctuary. Closing the door behind her, Maya leaned against it for a moment, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She pulled the photograph from her pocket and stared at it once more. The man in the picture was someone Vincent had clearly tried to forget. But Maya could feel there was more. There was always more. She had seen Vincent's strength, his confidence. He was a man who controlled everything, his associates, his wealth, his mansion. But even the most powerful man had secrets, and those secrets were about to surface. As she sat on the edge of the bed, Maya thought about her next move. The letter she had found in the library had given her the direction she needed. Vincent had made a deal that was more dangerous than he had ever let on. The fact that he had tried to bury it spoke volumes. She didn't know who Daniel Forsyth was, or what kind of deal they had struck, but Maya knew one thing for certain. She was going to use it against him. She wasn't going to let him continue living his life in the shadows of his lies. She couldn't let him. Maya looked around the room, her fingers grazing over the small, plain furniture. It wasn't much, but it was hers. For the first time since stepping into the mansion, she felt something akin to control. The power that had always belonged to Vincent was shifting. It was her turn now. She knew she needed more information, something to back up the letter, something that would make Vincent realize he couldn't just dismiss her. But as she thought about the next steps, she couldn't ignore the feeling of unease that had settled in her chest. The mansion, with all its beauty and opulence, was still a cage. It was a place where power was hoarded, hidden behind walls of gold and marble. She had spent months walking through it, invisible to everyone, including herself. But now, she was ready to step into the light. The phone on the nightstand buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from an unknown number. The message was simple: meet me at Pier 14. Tonight. I know what you're looking for. Maya's heart skipped a beat. She had no idea who this person was, but she knew one thing. They were connected to the secret she had uncovered. She had to go. Time was running out. She quickly gathered her things, grabbing the envelope and the letter she had found earlier. There was no turning back now. As she left the room, she paused for a moment, her eyes scanning the hallway. She wasn't sure who to trust anymore. Everyone in this mansion had their own agenda. But one thing was clear, Vincent was about to lose everything. And she was the one who would bring it all crashing down. Maya moved quickly through the mansion, the echo of her footsteps the only sound in the otherwise silent halls. The mansion felt colder now, more oppressive than before. She had always known she was just a small part of the puzzle, a piece that no one cared about. But now, she was in control. She had the power, and she wasn't going to let it slip away. As she stepped outside into the cool night air, Maya's breath caught. The darkness outside the mansion felt different now, as if it was filled with possibility. She wasn't afraid of what lay ahead. She wasn't afraid of Vincent. She had everything she needed to bring him down. And tonight, it all started at Pier 14. Maya stood in the shadow of the old pier, the salty air mixing with the tension in her chest. The faint glow of the streetlights barely illuminated the worn wooden planks beneath her feet. It was quiet here, the kind of silence that felt too heavy, too charged with unspoken words. She checked her phone again. The message had been clear, meet at Pier 14, tonight. But who had sent it? The mystery weighed on her, and she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. She pulled her jacket tighter around her, her breath visible in the cool air. She didn't know what to expect, but she knew one thing for sure. This was her only chance. She had to uncover more, something bigger than the secrets she had already uncovered. She couldn't let Vincent continue with his plans, no matter what it cost. The sound of footsteps broke the silence, and Maya's heart skipped a beat. She turned sharply, her eyes scanning the shadows. A figure emerged from the dark, slowly approaching her. The man's silhouette was tall, his face obscured by the dim light. Maya tensed, but she forced herself to stay calm. Whoever this was, she couldn't afford to appear weak. The figure stepped closer, and Maya could see the faint outline of a trench coat, his features sharp. He stopped just a few feet away. "I'm glad you came," the man said, his voice low but steady. "I didn't think you would." Maya narrowed her eyes. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice steady despite the swirl of questions in her mind. The man chuckled softly, but there was no warmth in it. "I'm someone who knows what Vincent Moretti is really up to. I've been watching you, Maya. You're clever, more clever than he knows." Maya's heart skipped another beat. She didn't know whether to feel relief or more apprehensive. "What do you know about him?" she asked, her voice sharp. "I know that he's been running his empire under the radar for years, hiding things that could bring it all crashing down," the man replied. "And I know that you found something that could change everything." Maya's fingers brushed the envelope in her pocket, the one with the letter and photograph. "I have what I need," she said, her voice quiet but firm. The man's eyes gleamed in the dim light. "No, Maya, you don't. What you have is a piece of the puzzle, but you're missing the rest. If you want to bring him down, you need to know everything." Maya felt a rush of frustration. "What do you mean, everything?" "I found the letter. The deal. I know about the man in the picture." The man stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You think that's all? That's just the beginning. The deal Vincent made, it's not just about money or power. It's about control. He's been working with people you don't even know exist. This goes deeper than you think." Maya felt her pulse quicken. She had thought she was getting closer to the truth, but now it seemed like she was just scratching the surface. "Who else is involved?" she asked. The man hesitated, his eyes flickering in the darkness. "People who have been watching you too, Maya. People who have been tracking your every move. If Vincent suspects anything, it's over for you." Maya's blood ran cold. She had always known there were forces at play behind the scenes, but now, the weight of those forces felt real, pressing in on her. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear building inside her. The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I want to help you, Maya. You've been running this race alone, but you don't have to. If you want to expose Vincent, you'll need to trust me." Maya stared at him, unsure. Was this a trap? Was she walking right into Vincent's hands? But then she remembered the secrets, the lies, and the way Vincent had looked at her when he had locked her in the basement. He thought she was powerless. But she wasn't. She had information, and that was power. She needed to decide whether to take this chance or risk losing everything. The man's voice interrupted her thoughts. Time is running out. Vincent's getting closer to finding out what you've done. You're already in danger, but if you don't act now, it'll be too late. Maya stood still, her mind racing. She had no choice but to trust this man, even if she wasn't sure if she could. All right, she said, her voice low but determined. What do we do next? The man nodded slowly. We take Vincent down, Maya. Together. He stepped back, disappearing into the shadows. Maya stood alone for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. She didn't know if she could trust him, but one thing was clear. She had already crossed a line. There was no turning back now. The game had changed, and she was ready to play. Maya stood at the edge of the docks, the cold breeze tugging at her jacket. The quiet hum of the city felt distant, swallowed by the vastness of the water and the echo of her thoughts. She had met with the mysterious man, but she couldn't shake the unease creeping into her mind. She had trusted him, but now, more than ever, she realized how deep the danger ran. She had uncovered a small piece of the puzzle, but the more she learned, the more she understood that Vincent Moretti's empire was far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. The deal, the photograph, the letter, those were just the beginning. The night was getting colder, and the distant sounds of footsteps pulled Maya from her thoughts. She turned to see a figure approaching. It was the same man, the one who had reached out to her earlier, his face partially obscured by the shadow of his hood. He stopped a few feet away, his gaze fixed on her, but there was no warmth. In his expression, he had the air of someone who was used to operating in the shadows, someone who knew how to remain unnoticed, and for the first time, Maya felt a flash of doubt. You came, he said, his voice steady but lacking emotion. Maya nodded, her eyes narrowing. I don't trust you, she said bluntly. You shouldn't, he replied, his voice quiet. But right now, trust is a luxury neither of us can afford. You've made a lot of enemies just by finding out what you have. Vincent is not the only one watching you. There are others. Maya's heart skipped a beat. Who? She asked, her voice tight with suspicion. The man took a step closer, his eyes scanning the empty pier as if ensuring no one else was nearby. I'm not the only one who knows what Vincent is hiding. There are people in this city who have been tracking him for years. But they're not just watching him. They're watching you too. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. She had always known there were powerful forces at play behind the scenes, but hearing this from him made everything feel more real, more dangerous. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice low but steady. You've already uncovered part of the truth, he said, his gaze intense. But there's more you don't know. Vincent's deal with Marcus, it's not just about money. It's about something far bigger, something that could change everything. But it's buried deep, hidden in plain sight, and it's something Vincent is willing to kill for. The man's words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their implications. Maya's mind raced as she processed what he was saying. The stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. I don't care about Vincent's empire, she said, her voice firm. I care about exposing the truth. I care about making sure he doesn't get away with what he's done. The man regarded her for a moment, his expression unreadable. And you think you can do that alone? He asked, a hint of skepticism in his voice. Maya paused, feeling the weight of his question. Could she really take down Vincent by herself? She had the pieces, but did she have the strength to put them together? She had already risked so much just by stepping out of the shadows, but she couldn't back down now. I have to try, she said, her voice steady. I won't let him get away with this. Not after everything he's done. The man nodded slowly, as if weighing her words. You're brave, Maya, he said, his tone softer now. But bravery alone won't be enough. You'll need more than just the truth. You'll need allies. And you'll need to be prepared for what's coming. Maya's heart raced. She knew he was right. This was bigger than just her. It was bigger than Vincent. She had uncovered a conspiracy, a network of people who were ready to do anything to protect their secrets. She couldn't fight them alone. Where do we start? She asked, her voice resolute. The man's eyes gleamed in the dim light. We start by getting to the heart of it. You're not the only one who's been looking for answers. There are others who know what Vincent is hiding. They've been watching him, too. But they've been waiting for someone like you. Someone with the courage to go after the truth. And we need to find them. Maya took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. This was her fight now. She wasn't just a maid in the shadows anymore. She was a force to be reckoned with. and she wasn't going to stop until she brought the truth to light. Together, they would take down Vincent Moretti and everyone who stood with him. But it wouldn't be easy. There were powerful people involved, people who would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. But Maya had one thing they didn't have. She had the truth, and she was going to make sure it was heard. Maya stood on the edge of the rooftop, looking out over the city, the lights below flickering like tiny stars in the distance. The cold wind whipped through her hair, but she hardly felt it. Her mind was racing, her thoughts tangled with everything that had happened in the past few days. She had stepped into a world she never thought she would, a world filled with lies, power, and danger. But now, there was no going back. The man who had met her at Pier 14 had disappeared as quickly as he came, leaving behind only a trail of cryptic words. He had said that there were others who knew about Vincent's empire and the deal that had been made. Maya didn't know if she could trust him, but something in the way he spoke made her believe that he wasn't lying. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but there was still so much she didn't know. What was this deal that Vincent had made? Who were these other people who were watching him? And why had they chosen her to uncover the truth? She didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing. She couldn't do it alone. She needed to find the people who were in this with her. She needed allies. But where to start? As she stood there, lost in thought, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out quickly, her heart skipping a beat when she saw the message. It was from an unknown number. "You're not alone," the message read. "Meet me at the warehouse on 5th Street. Midnight." Maya's pulse quickened. It was another meeting, another chance to find out more. She didn't hesitate. She knew she had to go. She couldn't waste any more time. The night was her ally now, and she wasn't going to let it slip away. She quickly made her way down from the rooftop, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the empty hallways. She had a mission, and she wasn't going to let anything stand in her way. The cold air greeted her as she stepped outside, the streets of the city feeling more alive than ever. She could hear the distant hum of traffic, the occasional car passing by, but there was a strange stillness in the air. It was as if the city itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Maya's heart pounded in her chest as she made her way toward 5th Street. The message had said midnight, but she wasn't going to wait. She was already running out of time. The closer she got to the warehouse, the more her anxiety grew. She didn't know who she was meeting, but she knew they had the answers she needed. When she reached the old building, she hesitated for a moment, glancing around to make sure no one was watching. It was a secluded area, the kind of place where no one would hear you if you screamed. But Maya wasn't scared. She had come too far to turn back now. She stepped inside, the heavy door creaking as it opened. The interior of the warehouse was dimly lit, the only light coming from a few scattered bulbs hanging from the ceiling. The air smelled of dust and something metallic, but Maya barely noticed. She was focused on the figure standing in the center of the room. It was a man, his back turned to her, but there was something about him that felt familiar. He turned slowly as she entered, and when their eyes met, Maya's breath caught in her throat. It was him, the man from the pier. "I see you came," he said, his voice calm and steady, just as it had been the first time they spoke. "You didn't have to, but I'm glad you did." Maya didn't answer at first. She was too busy trying to process the whirlwind of emotions in her mind. "Who are you?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The man smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was calculating, as if he knew something she didn't. "I'm someone who's been waiting for someone like you," he said, his tone laced with something almost admiring. "Someone who can see the truth even when it's hidden. Someone who's not afraid to fight for it." Maya felt a flicker of recognition in her chest. This man wasn't just some stranger. He knew about her, about everything she had uncovered, about the secret she was determined to expose. "Why me?" she asked, her voice filled with a mix of confusion and curiosity. The man's smile faded, and he took a step closer. "Because you're the only one who's brave enough to go after the truth. You've already seen the tip of the iceberg, but now it's time to dive deeper." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. "This is everything you need to take down Vincent," he said, handing it to her. Maya took the paper, unfolding it carefully. It was a list of names of people who were involved in Vincent's dealings, people who were hiding in the shadows, pulling the strings. Maya's mind raced as she scanned the names. This was it. This was what she needed. The final piece of the puzzle. "You have the power now," the man said. "But be careful. There are people out there who won't want you to expose the truth. Vincent is just the beginning. Maya's eyes locked onto his, her resolve hardening. I'm not stopping, she said firmly. Not until the truth is out. The man nodded, his eyes glinting in the dim light. Good. Because this is only the start. You're going to change everything. With that, he turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Maya alone in the warehouse with the weight of the world on her shoulders. Maya stood still in the dim light of the warehouse, her fingers clenched around the piece of paper. The names on it were like a map, a guide to the labyrinth of lies and deceit that Vincent Moretti had built around him. As she folded the paper and slipped it into her jacket pocket, she felt a sense of urgency settle over her. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was bigger. Vincent wasn't just a man. He was a symbol of everything that was wrong with the world she had found herself in. And now, she had the chance to tear it all down. But as her mind raced, she couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling in her gut. The man who had handed her the paper had disappeared as quickly as he had come, leaving her with more questions than answers. She didn't trust him. Not entirely. But there was something about the way he spoke that had made her believe him. He knew too much, and that could either mean he was on her side, or he was leading her into a trap. Maya shook off the unease and stepped out of the warehouse, her heart pounding in her chest. The cold night air hit her like a slap, but it only sharpened her focus. She had no time to waste. Vincent was dangerous, and if she didn't act quickly, he would crush anyone who stood in his way. As she walked through the empty streets, the world around her felt surreal. The city was alive with the hum of activity, but to Maya, it felt like she was moving in a different world, one where secrets were hidden in plain sight, and no one was what they appeared to be. Her footsteps echoed in the quiet streets as she made her way to her apartment. She needed to plan. She needed to gather information. But most importantly, she needed to stay one step ahead. She had already made herself a target by getting too close to the truth. There was no turning back now. When she reached her apartment, Maya locked the door behind her and sat down at the small desk in the corner of the room. The paper was still in her jacket pocket, but she didn't pull it out just yet. She needed time to think. The names on the paper were her next move, but she couldn't afford to rush. She had already made that mistake before. Vincent's empire wasn't built on just power. It was built on fear, and fear was a dangerous weapon. Maya knew she had to be careful. She couldn't trust anyone, no one except herself. She had learned that the hard way. Her eyes flicked to the window, where the city lights flickered in the distance. Everything in her wanted to run, to leave it all behind. But she couldn't. She had come too far. She had seen too much. There was no escaping now. The truth was out there, and it was only a matter of time before it caught up with her. But Maya wasn't afraid. Not anymore. She had the strength to fight back, and she wasn't going to let Vincent's empire stand. She stood up from the desk and walked over to the small window, looking out at the city one last time before she made her next move. As the cold wind blew in from the street, Maya's resolve hardened. This wasn't just a fight for justice. It was a fight for herself, and she was going to win. The truth would be exposed, and Vincent Moretti would fall. Maya spent the next few days in a whirlwind of planning and action. Every moment was critical, and she had no time to waste. Her mind raced constantly, as she worked to piece together the fragmented information she had gathered. The list of names she had received in the warehouse was a key to unlocking the larger conspiracy that had ensnared Vincent Moretti, but it wasn't enough on its own. Maya had to dig deeper. The first name on the list was a contact that seemed too familiar to ignore, Daniel Forsyth. The name had surfaced once before, when she had stumbled upon the old letter in Vincent's office, but there was no way to know if this was the same person. Maya's instincts told her that he was important, perhaps the key to everything. The man in the shadows who had given her the list at Pier 14 had hinted that others were involved, people who were watching Vincent from the outside, and Daniel Forsyth was the starting point. But Maya also knew she couldn't go to him directly, not yet. She needed to gather more information. So, she turned her attention to the second name on the list, Marcus Holden. The name didn't ring any immediate bells, but she didn't need recognition. She needed connections. She needed to find out where Marcus fit into the puzzle. Her first stop was an old acquaintance, a private investigator she had met years ago when she had worked with a few local businesses on security. His name was Eli McFarland, and while he had always been in the shadows, his knowledge of the underground world was unparalleled. She wasn't sure if Eli would be willing to help her, especially after all these years, but she had no choice. Maya knew he was the only one who could help her navigate the world of names and aliases, where the truth was often hidden behind layers of lies. She called him on a burner phone, knowing that Vincent or anyone associated with him could be listening. She kept her tone casual, masking the urgency beneath. Eli, Maya said when he answered. It's been a while. Eli's voice was a low rasp. Maya Williams. Been a long time. What do you need this time? Maya hesitated for just a moment before speaking. I need information. About a man named Marcus Holden. And someone named Daniel Forsyth. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then Eli's voice came through, careful and measured. You're digging into things you shouldn't, Maya. People like that don't get involved with the kind of work you're doing without a reason. You sure you want to go down this road? Maya took a deep breath, trying to calm the rising tension in her chest. I'm already down the road, Eli. I need your help. There was a long silence before Eli spoke again. All right, I'll see what I can dig up. But be careful, Maya. You're not just messing with the Mafia anymore. You're dealing with people who've got more power than you realize. Maya felt a chill at his words. But she knew he was right. Everything she had uncovered was bigger than she had thought. She had to move forward, but she had to be careful. There were forces at play that she couldn't fully comprehend yet. After the call ended, Maya leaned back in her chair, staring at the names on the paper again. It felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down into the abyss. Every move she made could either pull her deeper into danger or offer her the chance to turn the tide. She knew that time was running out. Vincent was getting closer, and the walls were closing in on her. It had been a few days since her meeting with the man at the warehouse, and still, nothing concrete had surfaced. She couldn't afford to wait any longer. It was time to act. Maya had always been good at reading people. It was part of her job as a maid, observing, listening, taking in the details that others missed. But now, she was using those skills for something else entirely. She had to think like Vincent Moretti. She had to understand how his mind worked, how he operated. And that meant taking risks. Later that evening, Maya found herself outside a small cafe downtown. It was a place she had visited often, a quiet spot where she could blend in and gather her thoughts. But tonight, she was meeting someone who might be able to help her get closer to the answers she needed. She had been in contact with an old informant who had worked for Vincent in the past. His name was Jake Carlson, and he was someone who had seen the darker side of Vincent's empire. Maya had met him a few years ago, when she had been trying to gather intel on a different case. Jake wasn't the type to share information easily, but if anyone knew what was really going on, it was him. Maya arrived at the cafe early, taking a seat at a small table near the window. The city was alive outside, the sound of traffic and voices carrying through the glass. She had been waiting for what felt like hours when Jake finally appeared, slipping into the seat across from her. He looked around quickly, as though checking to see if anyone was watching, before meeting her eyes. Maya, he said, his voice low. You're playing a dangerous game. Maya nodded, her eyes steady. I need to know everything. About Vincent. About the deal with Marcus. And about Daniel Forsyth. Jake leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping the table as he thought. You're asking for a lot, Maya. Vincent's not someone you just go up against. He's got connections everywhere. People who will stop at nothing to protect him. Maya didn't flinch. I've seen what he's capable of. I'm not afraid. Jake studied her for a moment, as if weighing her resolve. Finally, he spoke. All right, I'll tell you what I know. But you better be ready for the truth. Because once you start down this path, there's no turning back. Maya nodded again. I'm ready. Jake exhaled slowly, then began to speak, his voice low as he revealed the details she had been searching for. Jake leaned forward, his hands clasped together as he glanced over his shoulder before continuing. The quiet clink of cups and the low murmur of voices around them seemed distant, almost irrelevant in that moment. Maya's gaze was steady, her mind racing with every word that Jake spoke. She knew she was on the edge of something bigger than anything she had expected, but now, hearing Jake's words confirmed just how deep the web of deception went. Vincent Moretti isn't just a crime boss. He's been playing a much bigger game for years, Jake said, his voice low but firm. It's not just about money or power, though those things matter. No, Vincent's got ties to people who control everything from politics to law enforcement. People who protect him, who make sure he never gets caught. But there's more. Maya's heart skipped a beat. She had known that Vincent's reach was far, but hearing it out loud made the danger feel tangible, something she could touch. Go on, she said, keeping her voice calm. I'll tell you what I know, but you need to understand that this is dangerous, Jake continued, glancing at the door before lowering his voice even more. Marcus Holden? He's not just a businessman. He's been working with Vincent for years, laundering money through legitimate channels, real estate, offshore accounts, you name it. But Marcus is also tied to something darker, a network of people who handle things quietly, away from the public eye. People who make sure things go according to plan, no matter who gets hurt in the process. Maya's fingers tightened around her cup, the reality of the situation settling in. This wasn't just a fight against Vincent anymore. This was a battle against a system, one that had been in place long before she came into the picture. And Forsyth? She asked, her voice tight. Jake's expression darkened. Daniel Forsyth is the wild card. He's not part of Vincent's usual circle. He's got his own agenda, and that's where things get really complicated. Forsyth's been dealing with international arms trading, under the radar. But his business isn't just about guns and ammunition. It's about influence. He's been pulling strings for years, making deals with governments, setting up contracts with people who could turn the world upside down if they wanted to. Vincent's been dealing with him for a while now, trying to secure a partnership that would solidify his power globally. That's why it's so important that you're in the middle of this. Maya processed the information, trying to piece together the bigger picture. She had always suspected that Vincent's empire wasn't just local, but the international connections, the high-stakes deals. It was more than she had ever imagined. So what's next? She asked, trying to keep her emotions in check. Jake leaned back, his eyes scanning the room one last time before he spoke. Next, we go after Forsyth. If you want to take down Vincent, you need to start with him. Forsyth's the key. He's got information that could bring everything crashing down. But it's not going to be easy. The people he works with? They're not going to let you get close without a fight. Maya felt a wave of determination wash over her. She had come too far to back down now. She wasn't going to let Vincent or anyone else stand in her way. How do we get to Forsyth? She asked. Jake nodded, pulling a small piece of paper from his jacket pocket. This is a number you can reach him on, but don't expect him to just pick up. He's careful. You'll need to get creative, but you need to move fast. Vincent's got eyes everywhere, and you're already on his radar. Maya took the paper, feeling a chill run down her spine. She wasn't just walking into danger, she was already in it. But she had no choice. This was her only chance. Thank you, Jake, she said, standing up. I'll handle it from here. Jake gave her a grim smile. Be careful, Maya. There's no telling who you can trust anymore. Maya nodded, her resolve solidifying. As she stepped out of the cafe, the weight of the mission ahead settled on her shoulders. The city, with its bright lights and endless noise, seemed to pulse with life. But to Maya, it was nothing more than a backdrop to the battle she was about to wage. There was no turning back now. She had the key. She had the power. And she was going to take down Vincent Moretti. Maya stood outside the small, nondescript building on 5th Street, her heart racing. The wind had picked up, swirling the leaves around her feet, but she barely noticed. The world felt distant as she stared at the door in front of her. This was it, the next step in her mission. This was where everything would either fall into place or unravel. Jake had given her Forsyth's number, but she knew it wasn't going to be easy. This wasn't some simple phone call. The man was elusive, careful, and surrounded by shadows. But Maya had no other choice. She had to move forward. With one last deep breath, she walked toward the door and knocked. It creaked open after a moment, revealing a dimly lit hallway. Maya stepped inside, her eyes adjusting to the low light. There was no turning back now. As she walked further in, she could hear voices in the distance, quiet, indistinct. She wasn't sure if they were talking about business or just passing time, but she knew she had to be careful. The deeper she went into the building, the more she could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her. She was walking a thin line. If she made one wrong move, everything could come crashing down. She had to be precise, every step, every word. The hallway led to a door at the end, and as she approached it, she saw a figure standing by the window, back turned. The man was tall, with dark hair and a suit that looked expensive, but not too flashy. His back was straight, his posture rigid. Maya took another step closer. Mr. Forsyth? she called out, her voice steady, but her heart pounding in her chest. The man turned slowly, his gaze calculating as he assessed her. For a moment, they just stared at each other, neither of them speaking. "You came," Forsyth finally said, his voice smooth, almost calm. "I didn't expect you to be so bold." Maya didn't flinch. She had come this far. She wasn't going to let him intimidate her. "I'm here to talk," she said, her voice firm. Forsyth raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "Talk? I'm not sure I've got time for talk, Miss Williams." He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "You've been asking questions. Dangerous questions." Maya didn't back down. "And you've been hiding answers. I want those answers." Forsyth studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, with a sigh, he motioned for her to sit. "You have courage, I'll give you that," he said, his voice almost respectful. "But courage won't protect you from the truth. And once you hear it, there's no going back." Maya sat, her posture straight, her eyes never leaving his. "I'm ready," she said. Forsyth smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was a smile of someone who had seen everything, someone who knew the consequences of what he was about to reveal. "Very well," he said, sitting down across from her. "Vincent Moretti is just a small part of a much bigger game. What you don't know is that this is bigger than just him. It's a system that's been running for decades, pulling the strings of power, influence, and wealth. And Vincent." Forsyth leaned forward slightly. "He's just the muscle, the enforcer." Maya felt a chill run down her spine as she listened. She had known Vincent's empire wasn't just local, but hearing it from Forsyth made it real. "So who's really in charge?" she asked. Forsyth's eyes glinted with something dangerous. "People like me. People who make things happen from the shadows. We control information, we control money, and we control the people who think they're in power. People like Vincent, they just do the dirty work. But the real power? It's in the hands of a few who never get their hands dirty." Maya clenched her fists, trying to absorb the magnitude of what he was saying. This was worse than she had imagined. This wasn't just about taking down Vincent. This was about taking down a system that had its roots deep in the city, maybe even beyond. "And you?" she asked, her voice tight. "What do you want?" Forsyth leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled together. "I want control. I want power. And I want out of the game. The system is falling apart, and I'm just trying to save myself. You, Maya, you're the key to that." Maya narrowed her eyes, her instincts telling her that something wasn't adding up. "How am I the key?" Forsyth's smile faded, his expression darkening. "Because you've already started tearing it down. The moment you started digging into Vincent's dealings, you became a threat. And now, you've come to me for answers. You're either very brave or very foolish. Either way, it doesn't matter. I'm offering you the chance to join me. You want the truth? You want to expose Vincent? We can do it together. But I need someone I can trust, someone who's not afraid to get their hands dirty." Maya felt a surge of frustration. "You want me to join you? After everything you've told me, you expect me to believe you? Trust you?" Forsyth didn't flinch. "I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to trust the truth. And the truth is, you've already crossed the line. You're already in this deep. You can either fight against it and get crushed, or you can fight with me and change things for good." Maya's mind was spinning. This wasn't what she expected. Forsyth wasn't just a part of the system. He was one of the people at the top, pulling the strings, and now he was offering her a chance to help him tear it down. But could she trust him? She wasn't sure. "What's your plan?" she asked, her voice steady despite the chaos inside. Forsyth's eyes gleamed. "I have a plan. But first, you need to decide where you stand. Will you fight with me, or will you fight alone?" Maya's mind raced as she sat across from Forsyth, his words echoing in her head. She had come here seeking answers, but now she was caught in a web of choices. His offer, to join him in bringing down the system, was tempting. He was offering a chance to fight back, to have real power. But could she trust him? Could she trust anyone in this game? She had already seen what Vincent was capable of, the way he controlled everything from the shadows. But Forsyth was no different. He was offering her a seat at the table, but was it a trap? Was she just another pawn in his game? "I don't know if I can trust you," Maya said, her voice steady, despite the storm of doubt swirling inside her. Forsyth leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "I'm not asking you to trust me, Maya," he said, his tone almost gentle. "I'm asking you to trust the plan. Trust the truth. You've already seen what's been hidden from you. You've already made enemies. So, the question is, do you want to keep fighting alone, or do you want to fight with someone who can help you bring this all down? Maya's hands clenched into fists as she considered his words. She wasn't afraid of fighting alone. She had done it her whole life. But this wasn't just about her anymore. This was about something bigger. This was about the system that kept people like her down, the system that had allowed Vincent to rise to power. She had a chance to change that. And maybe, just maybe, Forsyth could be the ally she needed. What exactly are you offering? She asked, her voice low. Forsyth's smile was small but knowing. I'm offering you access to the people who have the power to expose Vincent. The truth isn't something that happens in the open. It's something that's hidden, behind closed doors, in the shadows. But I can give you access to that world. I can show you how to bring him down, how to expose him for who he really is. Maya felt the weight of his words settle over her. This was what she had been searching for. This was the chance she had been waiting for. But it was risky. She had already put herself in danger, but now it felt different. Now, she was being offered a way to take down Vincent, to finally end his reign of control. But was she ready for that? And what do you get out of this? Maya asked, her gaze steady. Forsyth's smile faded slightly, but there was no regret in his eyes. What I get is control, he said quietly. The system is breaking. Vincent is losing his grip, and when he does, the power will shift. But I need someone I can trust to make sure it falls into the right hands. Someone who knows how to fight for what's right, not just what's easy. Maya exhaled slowly, her mind racing as she weighed her options. This was the chance to bring Vincent down, to expose everything he had been hiding. But it was more than just that. It was a chance to take down a system that had been built on lies and manipulation. She had seen the truth, and now she had the opportunity to do something about it. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. But in the end, she knew what she had to do. All right, she said finally, her voice firm. I'll help you. But this has to be done my way. No more lies. No more manipulation. We do this the right way, or not at all. Forsyth's expression softened, and for the first time, Maya saw a hint of respect in his eyes. I wouldn't expect anything less, he said quietly. We'll do it your way. With that, the two of them sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their decision settling in. Maya's mind was still spinning, but there was a part of her that felt more certain than ever. She wasn't alone in this anymore. She had an ally, and together, they would bring Vincent down. The road ahead would be dangerous, full of twists and turns, but Maya was ready. She had a purpose now, a mission, and she wasn't going to stop until she saw it through. So what's the first step? She asked, looking up at Forsyth. He stood, his eyes gleaming with determination. The first step is simple, he said. We go after the people who are really pulling the strings. Vincent is just a puppet. We expose the ones who are controlling him, and we take them down. From there, everything else will fall into place. Maya nodded. This was the beginning of the end. She didn't know what lay ahead, but she knew one thing. She was going to fight until the very end. No matter what it took, Vincent's empire was going to fall, and she was going to be the one to bring it down. Maya woke up early the next morning, the sunlight creeping through the cracks in the blinds. She had barely slept the night before, her mind constantly racing with the decision she had made. Joining Forsyth was a step into the unknown, and despite her resolve, doubts still lingered in the back of her mind. But there was no turning back now. She had chosen her path, and she would see it through. The stakes were too high. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her as she prepared herself for the day ahead. The first step, Forsyth had said, was to go after the people truly controlling Vincent, the ones pulling the strings from the shadows. It was a bold plan, and Maya knew it would be risky. She couldn't afford to be reckless. She needed a strategy. She needed to know exactly who she was up against. After a quick breakfast, Maya left her apartment, the cool morning air brushing against her skin as she stepped outside. She had a lot to do, and no time to waste. The first name on her list was Marcus Holden. Forsyth had told her to start with him. Marcus was a businessman, but not the kind of businessman who played by the rules. He was someone who dealt with the underworld, with power brokers who kept their dealings behind closed doors. Maya knew she needed to be careful when dealing with someone like him. If she moved too quickly, if she made the wrong move, she could end up in more danger than she was already in. She had to gather information, quietly, carefully. Her first stop was a small cafe in the city. It was a place she knew well, a quiet spot where she could think and observe. She took a seat by the window, her eyes scanning the people around her, looking for anyone who might be connected to Marcus. She had learned over the years to blend in, to observe without being noticed. She was good at it. As she sat there, a man walked in, his sharp suit and confident stride catching her attention. He was tall, with a clean-shaven face and dark hair. There was something about him that seemed familiar, though Maya couldn't quite place it. She watched him closely as he ordered a coffee and sat down at a table near the back of the cafe. His presence was commanding, but he didn't seem out of place. It wasn't until he took out a folder from his briefcase that Maya's heart skipped a beat. The man was flipping through papers, and one of the documents caught her eye. It was a legal document, the kind she had seen Vincent look at before. She couldn't see the details from where she sat, but it was enough to make her suspicious. She had to know more. Maya waited until the man stood up to leave, and then she followed him at a distance, staying out of sight. She was careful, moving swiftly but quietly, making sure he didn't see her. She had to be patient. This wasn't about making a scene. This was about gathering information. The man walked for several blocks, turning into a side street. Maya kept her distance, keeping an eye on him as he entered a building with no signs, just a plain door. It looked like a private office, and from the way he had carried the folder, Maya knew it was important. She stood across the street, watching for a few moments, trying to decide what to do next. She needed to get inside, but how? She could try to follow him in, but that was too risky. Instead, she would wait, observe, and listen. If she was patient enough, she could learn more. Hours passed before the man left the building again. Maya was still waiting, hidden in the shadows. When he stepped out, he looked around briefly before walking in the opposite direction. Maya followed at a safe distance, her heart racing as she thought about what to do next. She needed to get a closer look at that building, but she couldn't do it alone. She needed Forsyth's help. He knew the right people, the right connections. If she was going to take down Vincent and everyone behind him, she needed to be strategic. She couldn't just rush in. She had to play this smart. That night, Maya met with Forsyth again, in the same quiet place where they had spoken before. The city was alive with noise and light, but their corner of the world felt like a small oasis of calm. She shared what she had seen, the man with the folder, the building on the side street. Forsyth listened carefully, his expression unreadable. Marcus Holden is connected to a lot of things, Forsyth said finally. He's not someone you can approach directly, but this is good. You're getting close. We just need to figure out how to get inside that building without getting caught. Maya nodded. She knew Forsyth was right. She couldn't go charging in, not yet. But she was getting closer. She could feel it. The pieces were starting to fall into place. And she wasn't going to stop. She would do whatever it took to expose the truth and bring Vincent's empire down, no matter how long it took, no matter what it cost. She had come this far, and she wasn't turning back.